Welcome to the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System Refresher Training. This training is a requirement as per the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Hereafter, Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System will be referred to as WHMIS. This WHMIS refresher training was created for organizations and employers to train their employees and all other obligated persons about WHMIS as per the requirements set out under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The content of this module is not legal advice, but does serve to satisfy the requirement for employers to train and educate their employees as required by the Occupational Health and Safety Act. If there is a discrepancy between this training and the Act, or any amendments to the Act that arise after this training has been completed, the Act will always prevail. This module is designed to provide you with all the needed information to satisfy the requirements under the Occupational Health and Safety Act regarding worker education and training pertaining to WHMIS. In this module, we will cover the following: the legislative requirements for WHMIS, controlled products and the classification system according to WHMIS, information concerning labels, material safety data sheets, procedures for the safe use, storage, and handling of controlled products, and we will discuss the Globally Harmonized System, or GHS, and the new requirements under WHMIS 2015. WHMIS stands for the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System. It is an information system designed to make workers aware of hazardous materials in the workplace and provides information on the safe use of hazardous materials. The three main methods of delivering this information is via product labels, material safety data sheets, commonly referred to as MSDS, and employee training and education. WHMIS is a Canadian-wide program applying to all jurisdictions via federal, provincial, and territorial laws. It only applies to hazards that are in the workplace. The information system is based on a fundamental right of employees, the right to know. The right to know refers to an employee's right to know or be informed of existing or potential dangers in the workplace. Training must be provided to all workers who are exposed or likely to be exposed to what WHMIS calls a controlled product. We will discuss controlled products in detail later in this module. An exposed worker is any worker who stores, handles, uses, or disposes of a controlled product or supervises another worker who does. A worker would be deemed likely to be exposed if they could be at risk of exposure through the before-mentioned activities, maintenance operations, or in the case of an emergency, such as a leak or spill. In addition to training employees, the employer is obligated to consult the Joint Health and Safety Committee or a worker health and safety representative about the content and delivery of the training program. Of note, the WHMIS has special applications for specific industries, such as laboratories and construction. Additional resources or training in addition to this module may be required to be compliant. A controlled product is a product, material, and substance that is regulated by WHMIS legislation. There are 6 classes of controlled products, including several subclasses referred to as divisions and subdivisions. The system is often referred to as the WHMIS classification system. Each class has been designated a specific symbol, many of which you may likely be familiar with or at least may have noticed on a product at work. The purpose of the symbols are to help people identify the hazard quickly and take the appropriate precautions. There is a total of 8 symbols which you should be able to identify at the conclusion of this module. In the next few slides, we will review these controlled products and symbols, the hazards associated with each product, and safe handling measures to ensure you work safely when handling controlled products. The first class of controlled product is compressed gas. Compressed gas is considered any product that is normally a gas at room temperature and is kept in a container under pressure. Examples of compressed gas include compressed carbon dioxide in fire extinguishers and welding gases. Hazards workers must be aware of when working with this material are: a leak could displace oxygen in the air, causing suffocation. If ruptured, broken, or heated excessively, the container may torpedo or explode. Liquefied gas can be extremely cold, causing severe burns from frostbite. Class B of controlled products is flammable and combustible material. These products essentially include any solid, liquid, or gas that will burn. There are 6 divisions listed within this hazard classification. Examples include propane, gasoline, silicone, and zinc powder. These hazards may burst into flames spontaneously or cause a fire when in contact with air, other flammable liquid, or exposed to heat, sparks, flames, or friction. The next controlled product classification is oxidizing materials. Oxidizers cause other substances to burn or continue to burn because they release oxygen. The hazards of working with oxidizers are: they may cause or accelerate a fire or explosion. The reaction may be particularly violent in the case the oxidizers are mixed with flammable substances, such as fuels. They may cause a fire if it contacts combustibles, such as wood or rags, even in a case where there is no source of ignition. Class D is poisonous and infectious materials. These materials can cause serious and harmful health effects. The WHMIS classification system has broken them down into 3 divisions, each with its own symbol. The first poisonous and infectious material is materials that cause immediate and serious toxic effects. These materials are highly poisonous and immediately dangerous to life. The effects of exposure to these materials are acute or immediate, and it may only take brief exposure to these materials to be seriously harmed. Examples include carbon monoxide and chlorine. Division 2 of this classification is materials that cause other toxic effects. These materials are in fact toxic, however the effects on the worker, if exposed, are not immediate. Latency refers to the concept that some occupational illnesses may not be immediately apparent or known. Latency is the period of time, sometimes years or even decades, between initial exposure to a hazard and the appearance of an illness or disease. Other materials in this division may not result in serious harm or death, but still may have harmful effects to the worker, such as skin irritation or allergic reactions. Examples of these materials include asbestos, lead, and latex. The third division in the classification is biohazardous infectious materials. These materials are most often found in hospitals, laboratories, or in medical research. Biohazards are organisms that cause disease in persons and animals. They are germs, bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites. Exposure to these materials can result in serious illness and death. Examples of these materials include HIV and hepatitis B. Classification E is coercive materials. These materials do exactly as the name suggests. They can cause severe burns and potentially permanent damage to human tissues, even burn through metal. Most coercives are liquids, but can be gases such as chlorine. These materials are often found in disinfectants and cleaners. Hazards that workers must be aware and guard against when working with these materials are: coercive materials cause severe eye and skin irritation upon contact. They can burn or destroy human tissue immediately, can cause severe tissue damage, and may have permanent effects such as blindness or lung injury if inhaled. They can corrode some metals. This is especially important when storing or transferring materials to alternative containers. Coercive materials may corrode the containers in which they are stored. The final class of controlled product is Class F, dangerously reactive material, which includes chemicals that are potentially self-reactive. Examples of these materials include vinyl chloride and epoxy resins. Hazards that workers must be aware and guard against when using these materials include the risk of serious harm to one's health and potential death. These materials may react aggressively when mixed with water. These materials also may explode or set on fire if exposed to heat, shock, friction, or handled carelessly. And these materials are very unstable and may become extremely reactive if stored for excessive periods. It is very unlikely that a worker will come into contact with these materials. For workers who may or must come into contact with these materials, very specialized training is required. For each classification, the following safety measures must be taken to ensure you are using, handling, and storing these substances safely. Be aware of the existence of these materials in the workplace and avoid using them when possible. If this is not possible, do not eat or drink around these materials and be sure to wash your hands often after use. Avoid skin contact, ingestion, and inhalation in all cases. Always handle with care, which includes not dropping, puncturing, or inappropriately handling the product, and ensure the container is sealed properly. Only use the product in a well-ventilated area, free of sources of ignition, heat, or sparks. Report any incidents or symptoms you experience immediately. Report leaks or spills to your supervisor immediately. Do not mix or contaminate chemicals. Some chemicals can be violent even if exposed to water. Ensure containers are secure when not in use, stored, and stable at room temperatures. And always wear the appropriate safety equipment. Now that we have reviewed the control substances and classifications under WHMIS, we will move on to the subject of labels. Labels are one of the ways hazard information is made available to anyone using a controlled product. Under WHMIS, labels are required, and there are very specific requirements for the content of labels on containers carrying hazardous materials. Labels are the first line of information for workers when dealing with the material. The label alerts the worker to the presence of a controlled material, the ability to identify the controlled material, as well as other important information that we will discuss in detail over the next few slides. The label serves as a prompt to reference the MSDS for the product. The MSDS provides more detailed information regarding the hazard and appropriate controls. If a worker is working with a product for the first time, they should reference the MSDS rather than just relying on the information in the label. The suppliers of controlled products are responsible for labeling products and providing them to customers in addition to the MSDS for the specific product. As you will discover over the next few slides, there are different types of labels and labeling requirements in addition to the supplier label. As the name indicates, supplier labels are provided by the supplier when the product is provided to the customer. It is ultimately the responsibility of the supplier to ensure this label is present before providing the product to the customers. In the case a customer should receive materials that do not have the required label, they must make the supplier aware immediately and are not to use the product until a label and MSDS are provided. There are very specific requirements regarding supplier labels and specifically the content. Supplier labels must be offered in both English and French. The outside or border of the label must have the WHMIS hatched border. This allows for quick and easy recognition of the label as well as the association to WHMIS and the requirements. In addition to these requirements, supplier labels must include the name of the product or product identifier, name of the supplier or supplier identifier. Notice that an MSDS is available. The applicable hazard symbols, which are the symbols we discussed in classification section of this module. Risk phases, which are words that describe the main hazards of the product. Precautionary measures, or instructions how to work safely with the product. And first aid measures in the case of exposure or an emergency. In some cases, there is a need for the employer to place a label on a product. If the material always remained in the properly labeled container that it came in, nothing more need be done by the employer. However, in the following cases, the employer is responsible to ensure a workplace label exists. If the original label on the product is missing or becomes unreadable. If the material was produced in the workplace. If the material from the original container is placed into a smaller container for use, the smaller container would require a workplace label. In the last case, a label would not be required if the material was decanted into a smaller container for immediate use, or if the person who decanted the material remained in immediate control of the material for use over a shift. In addition, labels may appear in placard form on control products received in bulk from a supplier. A workplace label does not have the same requirements for content as a supplier label. There need only be a minimum of 3 pieces of information on a workplace label: the product name or identifier, information for the safe handling of the product, and a notice that the MSDS is available. As stated, the 3 required pieces of information are indeed a minimum requirement. Workplaces have the opportunity to provide as much information in addition to the requirements as they choose. In addition to the label, suppliers are also obligated to provide a Material Safety Data Sheet, or MSDS, to customers for products that are or contain a controlled substance. A Material Safety Data Sheet is a document that contains information on the potential hazards of a chemical product and how to work safely with the product. It is similar to the label in both its purpose and information. However, the information contained in the MSDS is more substantial. A MSDS contains information on the use, storage, and handling of the product. The MSDS also goes into detail regarding the hazards of the product, safe working instructions, what symptoms to look for if exposed, and what emergency procedures must be followed in the case of exposure or an incident. There are a number of considerations for the maintenance of material safety data sheets in the workplace. MSDS sheets must be readily accessible to workers in the immediate area where the product for which the MSDS applies is being used or stored. They must also be made available to the Joint Health and Safety Committee or Health and Safety Representative. MSDS can be no older than 3 years. If the employer is using a product that is older than 3 years of age, the original MSDS is no longer valid, and it is the responsibility of the employer to contact the supplier to secure a new MSDS. Hard copies of the material safety data sheets have traditionally been kept in a binder or something similar. Employers now have the option to computerize the MSDS information, provided the computer system is working. Employees have access and are trained on how to use the computers. In any event, if the Joint Health and Safety Committee or representative requests a copy, the employer must provide a hard copy accordingly. And it is ultimately the responsibility of the employer to ensure that the MSDS is kept up to date and reflecting the current inventory. Should a worker notice a missing or unreadable MSDS sheet, they must report it to their supervisor immediately. Similar to the supplier label, the Material Safety Data Sheet has specific requirements concerning its content. 9 specific pieces of information must be included in an MSDS. They are as follows: product information, which includes the name of the product, as well as the names, addresses, and emergency phone number of the manufacturer and supplier; hazardous ingredients; physical data; fire or explosion hazard data; reactivity data, which is information on the chemical instability of a product and the substances it may react with; toxicological properties, which refers to the health effects of the material; preventative measures, first aid measures; and preparation information, which details who is responsible for the preparation and date of preparation of the MSDS. WHMIS is changing. Changes have been made to the legislation to incorporate the Globally Harmonized System, or GHS for short, into WHMIS. With the addition of the GHS, the new WHMIS requirements will be referred to as WHMIS 2015. WHMIS 2015 is presently in force, however the requirements are being phased in. Currently, suppliers may begin to use the new system. Employers must train workers about WHMIS 2015 over a reasonable time frame after new labels and safety data sheets appear in their workplaces. Employers must comply with WHMIS 2015 by December 31st, 2018. During the transition period, employers may continue to train in the WHMIS 1988. You have completed the assigned training module. You will now be required to take a quiz to affirm your completion and understanding of the content of this module. A score of 70% is required to pass the quiz. Upon completion of the quiz, you will be notified if you have passed or if you are required to take the training again. You are permitted one additional opportunity to repeat the training and pass the quiz should you fail the first time. Good luck.